So I think one of the most common problems in the industry is what we call pod fade, which basically means burnout. The majority of podcasters don't get past episode 7. And on Anchor, about 50% of podcasts are just dead. They're not actually active. They're not having new content produced. So going into podcasting, again, you need to understand that there's a lot of work. Finding guests, communicating with them, and scheduling, and then recording the episode, and then editing the episode, and then producing it, and then marketing it, and then following up with it. There's so much work that goes into it that people don't actually see.
Rain Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Supernova. I'm your host, Nova Lorraine, and author of the newly released book, Unleash Your Supernova, 101 Action Tips on How to Increase Creativity and Beat Burnout. If you're a creative or an entrepreneur and you're listening to this show, or if you know a creative or an entrepreneur and you want to learn how to happily and successfully survive the roller coaster of creative entrepreneurship, then definitely check out Unleash Your Supernova. Our podcast companion show is all about talking to creatives and entrepreneurs on the rise around the globe and getting their tips, their words of wisdom, and how they've been able to reach their limitless potential. I am so excited about our guest today. It's Mark Savant, and we're going to be talking about podcasting, guys. I mean, podcasts are on the rise. Over 50% of U.S. households listen to podcasts. There's millions of podcasts to choose from. However, only a small percentage, 30% of those podcasts, actually go past episode 5. So we're here to talk about what is all the hype around podcasts. I'm sure you've thought about it, because most people have, on launching your own podcast and how we can do that successfully. So let's get to the meat and potatoes and introduce our guest. Mark Savant is a digital media expert and social media agency owner. He helps people create better content in less time so they can focus on what they love. Mark focuses on the power of video collaborations to help clients create constant social media presences in less than 1 hour a week. His YouTube channel has over 600,000 views. His podcast, The After Hours Entrepreneur, features top digital marketing and media experts. If you're looking to build your brand and reach people online, Mark Savant is the guy to reach out to. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Nova. So honored to be with you here and the rest of the Supernova Nation. Really excited to talk about how we can create better content in less time so we can really focus on the things we love. So yeah, just honored to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited. And we met, over 6 months ago in this mastermind podcast, and we haven't actually seen or spoken in a couple of months. What you been up to?
It's been a really exciting year. This is a really challenging time for so many people, but I think whenever challenging times arise, opportunities start to reveal themselves. And in my mentality, Nova, is just to try to be a little bit better than yesterday every day. And that mentality is just really paying off dividends, picking up new clients, meeting more people, building my network. The podcast is just really taking off right now. It's just a really exciting time.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, well, I'm anxious to get into the content of our show. And as you know, we start off with a story because it's all about storytelling. I believe people remember stories better than just numbers and facts. So I would love for you to share a story about your experience in podcasting.
Yeah, so I started podcasting about 3 years ago. My show is the Awesome Dad Show, and I was just trying to learn the space, learn how all the technology works, the different hosting platforms, how to find my voice and really let my personality shine through, which, by the way, is way, way underrated. People do not talk about letting your personality and uniqueness shine through. It is so important. But yeah, so I started podcasting a few years ago. And what I found, Nova, and I think this is really important, I had a vision of where I wanted to go, right? I wanted to level up my skills. I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to build my network, because your network is your net worth, as the saying goes. And what I found is that after a year of running my show, The Awesome Dad Show, which is still in syndication, you can still listen to it. After a year of doing that, I found that people weren't actually paying me to teach them how to be a better father. people were paying me to teach them how to start a podcast. They were teaching me how to show up on social media. I was teaching people how to create a great personal brand online and how to build know, like, and trust and how to stay top of mind. And so I ended up pivoting, and I now host a very popular podcast called The After Hours Entrepreneur, where again, I just bring in industry experts. We can really focus on how to help people create that really, really bold personality on social media so we can build know, like, and trust, so we can stay top of mind. And it's just been immensely, immensely rewarding. And I'm just really honored to build the community so that people actually listen to me. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I love that. And so you actually have launched 2 podcasts, right? This is your second one, the After Hours Entrepreneur?
Correct. So the After Hours Entrepreneur is my second show. My first show, the Awesome Dad Show, is again where I started because, listen, there's a learning curve. And I really wanted to learn the space. And I think when you're looking to get into podcasting and digital media production, you can do one of 2 things. You can either learn it yourself and trade your time, or you can pay someone or join a course and you can actually pay to slingshot your way forward in the process. Either way works. But yeah, I just really wanted to learn the space. And now that I've kind of learned the space and I'm ever evolving, trying new things all the time, loving Clubhouse, loving vertical video right now. But as I just continue to learn the space and level up, it's been immensely rewarding. And I love my show, The After Hours Entrepreneur. I just broke the 100 episode mark a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to the moon, baby. We're going to the moon. More episodes coming.
Oh, yes, let's do this. Yes, do this. So, as you know, there's all this hype around podcasting. Is it worth it? Is it real? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's definitely real. It's absolutely real. And more people are starting to listen to podcasts every day. Really what I teach and really what I'm focused on, Nova, is how can I get the most value for my time? So when I get on a podcast with someone, it's not just a 30-minute conversation. It's a 30-minute video interview or a 30-minute video conversation. And then me and my team, we chop up clips that can be reproduced for Instagram and for TikTok and for LinkedIn. And then we also put tons of different clips on YouTube, on multiple channels. And it's one of the most powerful ways, Nova, I think, to get value for your time. You're not only making a connection with an amazing human being like yourself, but you're also able to produce tons of content on the back end. And whether you build out your own team or you hire an agency like Savant Media, is really up to you. But it's an extremely powerful way of creating tons of content. Again, I keep going back to this, building know, like, and trust, staying top of mind for 30 minutes of your time per week. It's extremely powerful.
So in terms of your agency, I'm intrigued because, this show, we're enlightening our listeners on podcasting because there are so many individuals that want to launch a podcast or have thought about launching a podcast. And so in terms of the repurposing your content, I'd like to touch on that a little bit because most people sort of stop at, okay, I'm going to do my interview or I'm going to talk in my mic for 30 minutes. I'm going to produce it and publish it and I'm done. And you just brought up a really good point on how you can get more value from that content. You already put the work in. And so your agency actually repurposes that for all these platforms?
Absolutely. And, I offer done by you and done for you type of services. But really what for some of my clients, it's just, hey, Mark, I just want to show up 30 minutes a week and I just want to hit record. I'll send you the video and then we take care of everything else, right? Chopping up the clips, posting them all over the web, and then just, like I said, posting them all over the web. So 30 minutes a week can equal hundreds of hours worth of content. And that's really what I focus on.
Love it, love it, love it. Before I forget, I want you to share your agency info. How would they, for those that are interested in that, how would they reach you?
Yeah, if you want to build know, like, and trust, if you want to create better content in less time, DM Mark Savant Media on Instagram, DM at Mark Savant Media on Instagram, code word Nova. Shoot me code word Nova and I'd love to help you out.
Sweet. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's move on. We were saying what's the hype around podcasts? And yes, it's absolutely real. I agree with you. I want to talk about what are some of the ugly aspects of podcasting. You're on number 2. I've produced several. Would love for you to share from your own experience, what are some things that those that are looking to start a podcast, what should they look out for?
So I think one of the most common problems in the industry is what we call pod fade, which basically means burnout. The majority of podcasters don't get past episode 7. And on Anchor, about 50% of podcasts are just dead. They're not actually active. They're not having new content produced. So going into podcasting, again, you need to understand that there's a lot of work. Finding guests, communicating with them, and scheduling, and then recording the episode, and then editing the episode, and then producing it, and then marketing it, and then following up with it. There's so much work that goes into it that people don't actually see. So I think going into it, you need to realize that anything that's worth doing is going to take effort, which, again, is one of the problems that we solve at Mark Savant Media, is to alleviate that so that you make sure that you have a successful show running forward that actually achieve your goals. I think that a lot of people overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, but completely underestimate what can be accomplished in 10. So to me, I think it's just really important that you go into it with the right mindset. If your goal is to start a podcast just so you can sell books, you want to record 10 episodes so you can sell some books or sell some magazines, that's not a good goal to have. So going into it with the right mindset, I think, is extremely important.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then some of the exciting things that people could look forward to when launching a podcast, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, doors are going to open that you never would have imagined. It's just really remarkable. The people I've had a chance to collaborate with, to speak with, the stages I've gotten to speak on, the clients that are calling me and reaching out to me, that it just never would have been possible without figuring out how to, host a great show, how to market it properly, how to get the right guests, and so on and so forth. So what's really exciting to me is every morning I wake up and I just don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to be behind that next door, but you'll find that when you start podcasting and you start being conscious and strategic about your goals and how to accomplish them, doors are going to open up daily, and you never know which door is going to open up next. I mean, heck, you might be able to get on a show with the real Nova Lorraine. You never know. Just keep opening doors.
Hello. That is right. I love that. So we talked about something that podcasters should be cautious of or be aware of, that the burnout is real in podcasting, just like it is in entrepreneurship and life. And by going in with your eyes open, being knowledgeable of what you're stepping into, having your goals, like you said, being intentional, that's going to help with that burnout. And then on the positive side, you may have speaking engagements, notable guests, unpredictable days that are exciting and would be fulfilling, that could come from the podcasting journey. So that's wonderful. I also would love to ask you, was there an experience or moment that surprised you while producing your first show and or launching or producing your second podcast show?
Well, I think, at least on my first show, what was interesting to me is when you actually have a podcast, you're going to get to have conversations with people you have no business speaking with, right? With my first show, I got to speak with Super Bowl champions. I spoke with celebrities. I got to chat with presidential candidates. And it's just really, really cool when you have a platform, because going into your podcast, really what you're doing is you're looking for ways to, provide value and information to an audience, but you also get to find unique ways you also get to provide value to these people that you look up to and you want to connect with. If you don't have a podcast, you're just like, for example, hey, Jasmine Star, very successful brand builder, I'd like to get on a phone call with you. She's gonna be like, okay, it's $500 an hour. But if you say, hey, Jasmine, I'd like to bring you on my podcast and help provide you with value, she's like, okay, cool, let's do it. So it's an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful networking tool when you do it right.
Oh, I love that. Love that. And I love how you mentioned that it's this exchange of value, right? And so you have someone that has expertise in something, and by not just saying, hey, give me 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour of your time just because, versus I have a show with an audience that's looking to learn. Would you like to come on my show? And let's have fun together. Let's have a conversation. That's a very different angle and perspective. And it's okay, I'm giving you something and then receiving something. And I think that's something that all entrepreneurs should have top of mind is what are you giving? What are you offering before you ask? And that mindset of being in that space of I'm ready to give, I want to give is going to allow so many doors to open. So I love how you put that in the podcasting framework. And this is a good time to segue to our second segment of the show where you play host. I'm going to pass you the mic and you can ask me whatever question you want.
I'd love to ask you this. Why did you start podcasting? What is your reason for starting your show?
Oh, that is a good question. I haven't had that question in a while. So I actually recorded my first podcast about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was with one of the singers of Josie and the Pussycat Dolls. Do you remember that group?
Sure.
And so as an editor of Rain magazine, I would do these interviews all the time. And I also had an interest in radio. And I said, you know what? I'm hearing about this podcasting thing. Let me give it a try. I set up an audio call because we didn't have all these fun software tools that we have now and recorded this interview and absolutely loved the experience. I mean, there's one thing when you are doing an interview by email and or when you are doing an interview for the sake of transcribing it into a story for the magazine, but it's really different when you're just having a conversation and the conversation is just going to live right there and then in that space, and you can fully be present during that conversation. And hearing the exchange and the other person's personality come through and feeding off of that, absolutely love that experience. So I knew from that moment that I wanted to do podcasting. Initially, I was looking at digital radio, but the accessibility and the barrier of entry was much higher back then. So I sort of just waited until the time was right. And then in 2019 is when I decided to bite the bullet, go full force, just learn as much as I could about how to launch a podcast and just do it. I didn't have anyone guiding me. I didn't have any mentors. I'm a big nerd. I love to research. And I just tried to find as much information as possible. And then very fortunately, I was introduced to someone who was a consultant in the podcast space. And he helped guide me in those last couple months before I launched, which was huge. Just to have someone to talk to, bounce ideas off of, get some guidance on the technical side of things. And right after I went live with my shows, I was approached by a podcast network to join their network. And so I actually launched twice. I launched independently on my own, and then a few months later went live with the Evergreen Network. And about a month later, I was nominated for Best Podcast of the Year. So I think guidance and mentorship and consulting, however you do it, is hugely important if you can get it when launching a podcast.
Love that. I mean, it's a great reason. Has podcasting impacted your ability to network and improve the quality of your magazine?
I would say yes. I mean, the magazine is about 14 years old, and I've interviewed a lot of celebrities just through the magazine. Actually, more celebrities probably through the magazine than the podcast. I would say for the podcast, I'm really looking at finding individuals around the world that are from a variety of industries that can share their words of wisdom, especially on the entrepreneurial side of things. And so, yes, when I come across a celebrity that also has a project, for example, and not just their art being their mainstay of revenue, I love bringing those individuals on the podcast as well. I believe that celebrities such as actors, singers, musicians, comedians, they are creative entrepreneurs. Their gift, their talent is their source of revenue. And so it's always great to get that perspective because I feel that it's that much harder to monetize this intangible gift sometimes than it is to say, hey, I built a phone or I designed a buy my hat versus I'm a really great singer, buy my song, So I love bringing those individuals on the podcast as well. I just love the medium. I just think sound is powerful. And as you said, if you do it right, there are so many rewards. I think it's easier to develop a relationship through the podcasts. And because I was doing audio interviews prior to recording them, it's a very similar experience.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really important, more so than any time in human history, that we're evolving the way that we communicate, right? Because if you were just printing out a magazine and putting it on magazine stands, I don't see any way you could be successful. You have to be innovating and evolving. There's new tools every day. So I think that it's really awesome that you recognize this early. When 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you recognized that, hey, there's this new medium out, there's a new way that I can communicate. And you started leveraging the tools that were available to you. Instead of saying, oh, magazine sales are down, you said, how can I solve this problem? How can I innovate to keep up? Because at the end of the day, and I love how Gary Vee looked at this, you can blame the market, you can blame your audience, you can blame your clients, but that's not who you should be blaming. That's the reality. You need to meet them where they are. And the reality is that more and more people are consuming audio content on their phones. They're consuming audio content on their computers. So I just think it's a really important time that you embrace that. And so many people out there are just saying, well, I'll start when I get my microphone, or I'll start when this happens. No, you got to start now. You can start a podcast basically for free today. If you don't start experimenting and innovating, I don't know what to tell you. You're digging your own grave as far as I'm concerned.
100%. I mean, I love the example you just shared. Podcasting is absolutely the future. It's here, it's now, but it's going to continue to be the future. Just like Instagram for business, but most people have an Instagram page. That's the trend that I'm seeing in podcasting. It's going to be, okay, everyone has a podcast. I mean, you have actors that are demanding studios to create a podcast for the shows. And so they see the value in this new medium. And as a magazine, when we launched, we were the first in the space that were focusing on creative entrepreneurs. And entrepreneur wasn't a word that anyone was using. It was small business owner at the time. And that was a leap of faith. And then wanting to take content and interviews to the podcast space, which is what inspired me to launch Pink Kangaroo, which is a network of shows that inspire, educate, and entertain, similarly to what the magazine does. So yes, by recognizing this new medium, thankfully by falling in love with the new medium, I was able to integrate it into our business model. So I personally have a podcast, and for my book as well, but then also Rain Magazine powers the Pink Kangaroo podcast network. So 100% agree with you. And I want to make sure we have enough time to take questions from our listeners. So I'm going to take the mic back and thank you for those questions, Mark. And I want to ask the first question from our listener. And her name is Mary. And her question is, I have a podcast, but I'm having trouble finding guests. What should I do?
Ooh, wow. And I actually just recorded an entire episode on this topic. I think we shared about 20 different ways to find your great, fantastic guest. I'll just hit a couple of them. So one of the easiest ways, right, is you just start DMing people on Instagram that you find interesting, okay? It's hard to reach people, but it's a good way to start. And quite frankly, instead of going right to that celebrity or that huge person that you want to chat with, try talking to the people in their inner circle, okay? And this is what we call the halo effect. When you can connect and build trust and build legitimacy with the people in their inside network, it makes it easier to get to that big person. The second tip I would give is Clubhouse. Clubhouse is an immensely powerful way of finding people to chat with. So on Instagram, for example, which was my first example, a lot of the people that you DM is just going to go to their spam box. They're never going to see it, okay? But if you can connect with someone on Clubhouse and have an interesting conversation with them, ask a great question, give some relevant feedback, well, then you can say, hey, this has been a great conversation, Nova. I'd love to bring you on my podcast, The After Hours Entrepreneur. I'm going to DM you on Instagram. Is that okay? 90% of the time, they're going to say, sure, let's do it. And that's an incredibly powerful way of getting there. Another way of doing this in finding your dream guest is who's launching a new book, who's releasing a new book. These are people that are hungry to get on podcasts, and just a really, really exceptional opportunity. I could probably go on for 30 minutes on this topic alone, But guess what? You can listen on the After Hours Entrepreneur. I have a fresh episode on this topic.
Love that. And all of those have worked for me. So Mark knows what he's talking about, guys. So definitely check out his podcast if you haven't already, the After Hours Entrepreneur. So yeah, all of those points are amazing. Thank you for sharing them. And I have another question, and this question is coming from Aisha. Her question is, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about Patreon. Do I launch my podcast with a paid community, or do I just launch it independently?
Okay, so this is a great question, Aisha. And the answer is you should just start your podcast now, okay? I think that it's a good idea to have a paid community. I think a Patreon is a fantastic way to kind of crowdsource your show and just kind of have some recurring revenue. There's a lot of different ways. I have a great video on YouTube at Mark Savant Media on how to create different sources of income other than just sponsorships. Because I think when most people think podcasts, you just think, I'm just going to run ads against my show. But there's a lot of different ways that you can monetize your show. And that is a great way. Patreon is a great way to do that. But Patreon and your podcast they're connected, but they're not the same thing, because what you're going to want to do on your podcast is use a host like Buzzsprout or on Anchor, for example. And then one of your calls to action can be, hey, would you like to join my community where I actually have meetings with everyone and we build our community? Just find an additional way to give an additional piece of value, whether that's exclusive podcast episodes or if that's face-to-face conversations via Zoom. So Patreon is a great way to monetize, but again, you don't need to have some sort of Patreon built out to run your podcast. You can run your podcast immediately and then always add a Patreon at a later date when it's appropriate, after you've already built up some momentum. There's no one right way to do it, but I love that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great advice. And I would say when I'm speaking with podcasters, that is a question that comes up a lot around monetization. And I feel that the burnout that you had mentioned earlier, a lot of it ties into, wow, this is so much work. I'm putting out all this money and time and I'm getting nothing back, and I don't see how to get something back. So I love how you mentioned that, yeah, there's more hope than just advertisers or just sponsors. And you said that they can find that video on YouTube?
Yeah, at Mark Savant Media on YouTube. I've got a ton of great videos. So this is another quick point is I actually started on YouTube because I kept getting the same questions over and over and over again. For example, how can I get a great guest? How can I launch my podcast? How can I market my podcast? What's a fast way to edit my podcast? How can I multi-purpose, right? So I started getting the same questions over and over again. I said, you know what? Instead of having the same conversation over and over again, I'm just going to start recording videos to answer these FAQs. And it's been, the YouTube channel, Mark Savant Media, now has over 600,000 views. It's growing daily. And it's just been extremely helpful to people. And I really what my goal is to say, hey, what is the problem that you're trying to solve and how can I best solve that? So whether it's free YouTube content, whether it's paid coaching, whether it's full done-for-you services, I've got a lot of different ways, but I think that I just want to help people because podcasting and social media content production is extremely important. It is extremely, extremely important. If you don't have a social media presence, if you don't have a digital media presence, you're not going to build know, like, and trust. You're not going to stay top of mind. You're going to be forgotten. I'll tell you what, when I'm looking to hire someone, the first thing I do is start looking at their social media platform. I don't look at their resume. I look at their social media platforms. Does this person align with me and with our company vision? Does this person understand, some of these basic principles? Are they posting just a bunch of garbage online? Who is this person? And social media, if you're thoughtful about it, is extremely powerful. And I think that podcasting is an extremely great way to drive that bus forward, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It absolutely makes sense. And I'm going to have to bring you back because I feel like we are just scratching the surface on the do's and don'ts of podcasting for all of those listeners that have thought about it or are on the journey and have questions. So really love the insight you shared with us today, Mark. And again, our listeners, check out Mark Savant Media And if you need your content repurposed, his agency can absolutely help you with that. Really, really enjoyed our conversation today and the story shared. And like I said, if I ask another question, we're going to be talking for another 15 minutes, and we are out of time for today's show. But absolutely would love to bring you back if you are open to that, Mark.
Yeah, let's keep in touch. And again, this is the power of podcasting. It's the ability to build your network, and your network is your net worth. So build your network today, start a podcast, and send me a DM at Mark Savant Media on Instagram, at Mark Savant Media, code word Nova. I'd love to know that you were listening to the show today.
Yes, code word Nova. Y'all hear that?
What? That's the secret word, Nova.
That's the secret word. All right. Well, this is another episode of Unleash Your Supernova. And we had Mark Savant today from After Hours Entrepreneur, the podcast. Check him out. He's also on Clubhouse and on YouTube. It was a pleasure having him today. And again, to help all those that are thinking about, should I launch a podcast? And I've launched a podcast. Should I keep going? So there are resources out there for you guys. So just listen to our show, get the info that Marcus shared earlier, and follow through with that on your podcast success. So that is it for today. And again, if you haven't yet not gotten the Unleash Your Supernova book to help you on your journey of creative entrepreneurship, it's available at all major bookstores. Increase your creativity, beat burnout, discover the right mindset, and how mindfulness can play into helping you unleash your superpowers. Okay, thank you again for joining us. And this is Nova Lorraine. And this is Unleash Your Supernova. Until next time. Bye, Mark.
Take care. Have a great day.